The boardroom at Sterling Enterprises was usually a quiet place, a glass sanctuary perched 42 stories above the city. But today, that silence was shattered by a tense, awkward confusion. At the head of the long mahogany table sat Eleanor Sterling, the matriarch who had built this $50 million empire from the ground up. Her hands were a blur of elegant, desperate motion. She was pleading, warning, trying to explain, but nobody was getting it. Her own son, the billionaire CEO Alex Sterling, stood beside her, his face a mask of concentration as he fumbled to translate a language he only half knew. Across the table, the board members shifted in their seats, their polite smiles barely hiding their impatience. One of them, Alex's cousin Bradford, even had a cruel little smirk on his face. A mother's urgent warning was getting lost in translation, and a disaster was about to unfold. Section 1, the gathering storm. This meeting was supposed to be easy, just a final sign-off on the Helios Initiative, a $50 million solar tech deal that was meant to be the company's future. Bradford, the head of acquisitions, sold it as a sure thing, a guaranteed win. The numbers looked fantastic, the projections were perfect. But Eleanor, whose intuition could smell a bad deal from a mile away, felt a deep, chilling dread. She'd been deaf since she was a child and had spent her life in a world that often mistook her silence for ignorance. She'd taught herself to read a balance sheet like it was poetry and to see the lie in a man's eyes, even when she couldn't hear his words. Her professional interpreter had cancelled, a last-minute family emergency. The backup was stuck in traffic. Alex had told her not to worry. "I can handle it, Mom," he'd signed, his hands clumsy but full of love. He knew enough sign language for holidays and family dinners, but he was a tourist in his mother's native tongue. And today, she desperately needed a local guide. As Bradford droned on about synergy and market disruption, Eleanor got more and more agitated. She'd spent the last 3 nights digging into the Helios proposal, checking suppliers, and tracing the maze of money. What she found made her blood run cold. She tugged on Alex's sleeve, her hands flying, spelling out complex financial and legal terms that were way over his head. "Mom, slow down," Alex whispered, trying to keep up. "She's asking about the supply chain." He looked over at Bradford, confused. Bradford just chuckled, a low, condescending sound. "Alex, with all due respect, maybe we can deal with Mrs. Sterling's concerns after the vote. We're on a tight schedule." He then looked directly at Eleanor, his smile sickeningly sweet. "Don't you worry, Eleanor. The real adults will handle this," he said, talking down to her like she was a confused child. The insult hit her like a punch. Eleanor felt a wave of humiliation. She wasn't just being misunderstood, she was being dismissed, made to feel small. Her deafness was being used to make her invisible. Alex felt a hot flash of anger for his mother, but he was trapped. He could see the fire in her eyes, but he couldn't understand the warning she was trying to give him. He saw the smoke, but had no idea where the fire was. Eleanor tried again, signing slower this time, forming the words, Shell Corporation, Cayman Islands, fraud. Alex struggled, only catching pieces. She thinks there's an issue with an overseas partner," he translated, his voice filled with doubt. Bradford waved it off. "It's standard practice for a deal this big, Alex. Tax purposes, liability. It's a little too complex for a layperson to understand." The message was clear, it was too complex for her. The other board members just nodded, wanting to get the vote over with and get to their fancy lunches. The vote was called. Hands were about to go up. A $50 million lie was seconds from being approved, and Eleanor Sterling could only watch in silent despair, her screams unheard by her own son. Section 2, the unraveling. The room felt heavy as the vote was about to happen. A knot formed in Alex's stomach. He was a titan of industry, but right now, in front of his own mother, he felt completely useless. He saw the mix of anger and heartbreak on her face and felt a deep, gut-wrenching failure. He'd learned enough sign language to say, "I love you," but he'd never learned enough to say, "I understand you." That difference had never been so painfully clear. Eleanor's hands moved one last time in a final, desperate plea. She signed Bradford. She signed 2 million. She signed Steele. Alex's translation was a weak echo of her fierce accusation. She's concerned about Bradford's $2 million commission. Bradford let out a loud, dramatic sigh. For the last time, Alex, my pay is based on performance and it's all in the paperwork. Are we really going to let these baseless fears stop the single biggest deal in our company's history? He leaned in, his voice like ice. It's time to make a choice. Are you the CEO, or are you your mother's keeper? The challenge just hung there. The board stared at him, their faces a mix of pity and impatience. He felt the weight of their eyes on him. He picked up the silver pen that would sign away $50 million. His mother's legacy. He looked at her, his eyes silently apologizing. He was about to give in. That's not what she said. The voice was quiet, clear, and came from out of nowhere. Every single head turned. Standing by the windows was a small boy, no older than 10, wearing jeans, a hoodie, and a backpack. It was Caleb, the son of Maria, one of the cleaners. He often did his homework in the break room when his mom worked a late shift. Bradford scoffed. Excuse me. This is a private meeting. But the boy was looking at Eleanor. And to everyone's utter shock, his hands started moving, forming fluent, perfect signs. He was talking to her. A wave of pure relief washed over Eleanor's face. She signed back, a fast, complicated stream of information. The boy nodded, his face serious. He turned to the room of stunned executives. His voice was young, but it carried an unshakable certainty. She's not worried about a commission, Caleb said, looking right at Alex. She said $2 million of the first payment isn't going to the Helios project. It's being sent to a different company. A shell corporation. He paused, then looked at Bradford, whose face was quickly losing its color. A shell corporation in the Cayman Islands. She says she found out it's owned by you, Mr. Bradford. Section 3, the reckoning. You could have heard a pin drop. The only sound was the faint buzz of the city below. All eyes were on the 10-year-old boy who had just become the bridge between their world and Eleanor's. Bradford Sterling looked like he'd seen a ghost, his face was pale and sweaty. This is ridiculous, Bradford stammered. He's a kid. What does he know? He's making it up. But Eleanor was already signing again, her movements sharp and precise, like a surgeon. Caleb translated instantly, his young voice cutting through Bradford's pathetic denials. She says to check the wire transfer rules in the proposal, Appendix B, Section 4. The account number for the first payment doesn't belong to the Helios team. She traced it this morning. It goes to a company called BS Holdings, Limited. Caleb paused, letting those initials sink in. She also says this isn't the first time. She has proof from the Phoenix deal 2 years ago. Same pattern. Same amount of money. Alex felt like he'd been kicked in the stomach. He looked at his sweating cousin, then at his mother, whose eyes were now calm and steady, and finally at the boy who had just exposed a multi-million-dollar fraud in less than 2 minutes. He dropped the pen. It clattered on the table. He walked to the conference phone and hit a button. Jessica, get security to the 42nd floor boardroom. Now. And get our head of internal audit on the line. Bradford just slumped in his chair, totally defeated. The fight was gone. The other board members looked on, their expressions shifting from shock to a newfound respect for the quiet woman they had so easily brushed aside. While they waited, Alex knelt in front of his mother. He really looked at her, and for the first time, he truly understood how badly he'd failed her. It wasn't just about the sign language. He had failed to listen with more than his ears. He brought his own hands up and signed slowly, clumsily, but with an emotion that was impossible to misunderstand. "I am sorry. I should have listened." Eleanor reached out and put her hand on his. She gave him a small, sad, forgiving smile. Then she looked over at Caleb, who was standing awkwardly to the side. She beckoned him over and signed to him, her movements soft with gratitude. Caleb blushed. "She says, 'Thank you,'" he translated softly. She says that for the first time in a long time, in a room like this, she felt heard. Alex stood up and walked over to the boy, kneeling to be eye to eye with him. "How did you?" "My little sister is deaf," Caleb said, as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. "My whole family signs. I've been helping my parents at doctor appointments since I was little." The simple power of it hit Alex like a ton of bricks. All his money, all his power, his Ivy League degree, and he was helpless. But this kid, with nothing but love for his family and the language that came with it, had saved them all. When security arrived and let a silent Bradford out of the room, an older board member, Margaret, started clapping. Then another joined in, and another, until the whole room was applauding. It wasn't for Alex. It was for Eleanor, and for the 10-year-old boy who had finally given her a voice. Conclusion: after that day, the Helios Initiative was completely rebuilt, with Eleanor Sterling leading the new oversight committee, with a full-time, highly paid team of interpreters by her side. The company was saved from a $50 million disaster, but the real change wasn't just on the balance sheets. The very next week, Alex Sterling announced the Caleb Fund, a multi-million-dollar scholarship, fully funded by the company, to help deaf and hard-of-hearing kids and their families get the resources they need. Caleb and his family were, of course, the first recipients, with a full ride for his education all the way through college. The story of what happened in that boardroom became a legend at the company, a powerful lesson about what it really means to listen. It was a reminder that someone's value isn't measured by how loud they can speak, but by their willingness to be understood. It showed that sometimes, the most important voice in the room is the one nobody is paying attention to. And that a real hero doesn't always wear a suit. Sometimes, he's a 10-year-old with a backpack, whose quiet courage, born from love, was all it took to let the truth be heard. Stories like this are a great reminder that true strength and understanding can show up when you least expect it. If this story moved you, please give this video a like and subscribe for more inspiring content. And don't forget to share this with someone who believes every single person deserves to be heard. We'd love to hear from you in the comments. Tell us about a time you saw someone completely underestimated, only for them to prove everyone wrong.